If we start with that developing story, it is moving quite quickly in the last hour or so. The US soldier Travis King, who was being held in North Korea, is now in US custody. Hours earlier, North Korea said it would deport Private King, who ran into the country across the demilitarized zone in July. He had been due to be flown to the US to face military disciplinary proceedings when he escaped his escort and then entered into North Korean territory. So those details emerging all the time. As I say, it is moving quite quickly. We have our teams in Seoul, in South Korea, also in Washington. Gary O'Donoghue, our correspondent, he's just getting into his seat there as we go to him for the latest, because just in the last few moments, the Reuters news agency reporting that the private is in US custody after being expelled by North Korea into China. A very interesting, significant development. There is a picture of Travis King and, of course, taking everybody surprise a month or so ago when suddenly he made that escape across the DMZ into North Korea. And we've heard absolutely nothing since then, apart from just one or two lines from the North Korean authorities. And apart from that, absolute silence. So, as I say, Gary O'Donoghue ready to talk to us about all the latest. And Gary, in terms of what we are learning just in the last few minutes, that Private King now in US custody.
Yeah, we can say that he is now in US custody, and of course this comes after being in detention inside North Korea for just over 2 months. He crossed over from the demilitarized zone, from the joint security area, into North Korea in the middle of July, and he's been there ever since. We should be able to bring you more details in short order about how this whole thing unraveled and how it all came about. At the moment, that's under wraps, but we do understand he's in the custody of the US military and on his way home in that sense. So we should be able to bring you some more on that. Bear in mind, this has been, this will have been a huge diplomatic effort one way or another. The US doesn't have diplomatic relations with the DPRK. More often than not, in the past, certainly Sweden has represented the United States in Pyongyang, so they may well have been involved in all this, and there may have been other agencies involved too. But a sort of difficult situation for both sides. Does look like it's been resolved. The North Koreans themselves have issued a statement saying they've expelled Travis King. They make reference actually to what they say is his attitudes to America in terms of racial inequality and unfairness of society here. Of course, Travis King is a black man, and that's something that came out while he was in detention, and people wondered whether he'd said any of that of his own free will. We'll find out, presumably, at some point when he gets to speak freely, if he chooses to do that. But as we understand it now, on his way back to US territory in some form or other, the 23-year-old private from Wisconsin. It's also worth bearing in mind, Matthew, that for him and his family, things are a little bit uncertain about the future, because he was on a charge when he crossed over into North Korea. He'd been taken to the airport by military officials to be put on a plane back to the United States to face charges over criminal damage and assault while on deployment in South Korea. He left the airport, he went on a tour to the demilitarized zone, the JSA, and that's when basically he made a run for it.
Gary, we know that he's been deported. There is so much in this story we don't know, and perhaps we'll learn through the next 3 hours of today's show here on Verified Live, both from South Korea, the details emerging there, the details likely to come from officials where you are, but we don't know the when, the how, the why, even what condition Travis King is actually in.
No, not officially at this stage at any rate. We should, as I say, be able to bring you some more of that in pretty short order, but at the moment that's all we can say. Of course, there will be concerns about him, won't there? Because you'll remember the American student Otto Warmbier, who was detained in North Korea back in 2000, in the mid-2000 teens, eventually released in a coma and brought back to the United States and died in short order afterwards. So people will be looking very carefully and asking very close questions about the way Travis King has been treated during his time, because that is of concern. And if you go back more historically, Matthew, there have been other American soldiers who have crossed over. I mean, this for our viewers, let's just remind them that this demilitarized zone, this division along the 53rd parallel, has been there, 38th parallel rather, has been there since 1953, since the end of the Korean War and an armistice, not the end of it, but an armistice. And since then, some American soldiers have crossed over. Many of them have died in North Korea.
Well, Gary, for now, thanks very much for that update. I'm sure we'll talk again through the next couple of hours. But Gary O'Donoghue, live for us there in Washington with the latest.